Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 88 of the Still City Insider podcast. Jim, we're only 12 away from 100. Can you believe that?
Wow. What are we going to do? I mean, we can't call it the what numbers is 80, 88?
88.
Is that the Courtney Hawkins? But anyway, we won't be able to call it the players when we get to three digits.
It's
What are
true.
we going to do?
We'll have to come up with something creative. You're pretty creative, so I'm sure we can generate something fun, something unique.
I got to do all the thinking around here, don't I?
I'm telling you, you do. And I tell you what, there's lots of thinking to be done as a Steelers team that once sat at 7-4 is now 7-6, coming off two putrid losses to two 2-10 teams. A lot of twos here, losing to the Patriots last week on a Thursday night, 21-18, and somehow they still remain as the 6th seed. They have that wild card spot due to some favors from some of their NFL brethren. They play Kansas City right now. They're gearing up for the Colts this weekend, a Saturday game, kind of a unorthodox schedule, 4:30. But the sky is falling in Pittsburgh, and we're going to get to all of that from people calling for Tomlin's job, his resignation, just after they let go of their coordinator. So there's so much to talk about, but so fans are so dissatisfied with this team. Reports of even hearing a fire Tomlin chant at last week's game. Fans are calling for him to lose his job, but we know that's not going to happen. There was even a Bleacher Report insider, Jordan Schultz, who reported that Tomlin definitively will be returning as the coach next year. That's no surprise. You have fans calling for a trade a la John Gruden to the Commanders for draft picks. What say you about all this Tomlin turmoil?
Well, I don't even know who Jordan Schultz is. Never heard of him. I don't know how he would know, but it's a pretty good guess. It was a smart guess because I don't see it happening at all. I mean, he's got a winning record in a rebuilding phase. It's just as simple as that. I know everybody wants to extrapolate and go into all the playoff losses from years past when he had a fading quarterback and he couldn't rebuild from the championship team. You know, a dying franchise quarterback couldn't get it done. Now everybody's adding on because they have to rebuild the entire line. They have entirely new skill people and a new quarterback, and the quarterback's injured. And he's got a winning record. I mean, it's just not going to happen. I know that's not what anyone wants to hear. It's not going to happen. And the trade, I don't see that at all. That's just not. That's not what the Steelers do. They're not going to treat a guy like that unless he wants to go, and I don't see him wanting to go.
Yeah.
I know Washington's kind of his home. He's a Newport News guy, a Norfolk guy, Chesapeake Bay guy, and Washington would probably get him closer to home, but his home's Pittsburgh now.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. After 17 years, it's hard to uproot yourself, even though you're from that area. But you're right. That's not happening. Tomlin's not going anywhere. But I can understand the frustration from the fan base with what's been happening, not just this season, but seasons past. Hanging the hat on the finishing with a winning record every year. There is a sense of frustration, and that has to be addressed somehow. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll talk about the Tomlin presser. But there's also been brought up this week dissension in the locker room, and you had an opportunity to be at practice today. Did you get any vibe that there is some divisiveness in there?
I just got a vibe that they lost to two crummy teams and they're competitors and they're upset. I asked Cam, I said, what do you think about that? What can you tell me about the perception that this team's rife with dissension? The locker room's lost. He goes, screw perception. I went over to Allen Robinson. I tried to talk to some of the leaders. They don't get a sense of that at all. But I did ask. I asked Allen. I said, I'm not looking for names, but are people taking plays off? He goes, well, if you look at it, if you take a few plays out of here and there, kinda. Yeah. So at least there was that admission. But otherwise, everybody's band together. Tomlin was walking around the locker room doing his usual with the guys. Happy business day to you. And, he's not going to lose the locker room. There are some wide receivers that are questionable with that. George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, you just wonder. Najee's a little moody and a little surly at times. There really is no offensive leader. Ciamalo is probably the one guy you could look at as a wise head, but it's his first year on the team and he's a quiet guy anyway. So, I mean, guys like Freiermuth are emerging into leaders, and Jalen Warren's a laid back dude, and there really is no quarterback leadership. Mitch gives you leadership. Mason gives you leadership, but I mean, half of that has to be brought with effectiveness at your position. And there's no effectiveness at quarterback. So how good of a leader can that quarterback be?
Yeah. And
so the offense just lacks leadership, and the defense is lashing out a little bit. I totally understand it. I just don't see a lost locker room. I know the Tomlin detractors, the guys that want him fired now, are going to pile all this stuff up. And he's had a couple crummy games. Ben Roethlisberger on his podcast ripped Tomlin's game management, but it was a time management, as if he screwed up the clock at the end of the game. I thought they called a timeout too early. I put that on Trubisky or whoever didn't get on the field, and that could be Tomlin too. But I don't think it had anything to do with game management. That's a catch-all thing for Tomlin.
Yeah,
game management. And you ask anybody, give me a concrete example of him screwing up the clock. Nobody ever gets anything. Everybody just thinks he's doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So that's not going to be good for our comment section, is it, Jim?
Hey, it's a diplomatic arena for discussion and discourse around this team. So we're just sharing different viewpoints and perspectives here. But in talking about dissension in the locker room, you're saying that you didn't observe it. You didn't get that sense from the players. I guess if that was the case, from your experience and having covered the team for as long as you have, what would that look like? How would that, I guess, division start to manifest itself outside of the locker room on the field? And has some of that happened that's making people draw these types of conclusions?
Well, it's funny you bring that up. It was the spring of 2000, and I was interviewing Richard Huntley with Jerry DiPaolo next to me and then Ed Bouchette next to him, the three of us. And this fist comes over my shoulder and just missed Huntley. It was Earl Holmes. And then they got involved in the brouhaha, and it happened right over my shoulder. That was dissension in the locker room. Richard Huntley versus the linebackers. You're not going to win that one, Big Rich. So, that was 2000 after 98 and 99 and 2000. And I still really don't think they lost the locker room. Earl Holmes was a baller. Jason Gilden, he was waving a stool around. Joey Porter, somebody yelled, because we left our tape recorders running because we were interviewing. So we let the tape recorders run, and still somebody yelled, "Come get some." And the guy with the stool yelled, "I got some."
I loved Earl Holmes, the hitman. He was one of my favorites. Maybe that's what this team needs. They just need to have an all-out brawl and just clear the air.
Well, it's better in the spring. You can clear that stuff up. I think Minka did a good job of clearing the air. You ask the offensive guys. I asked Dan Moore, what'd you think about what Minka said? And he said, well, you're going to have to ask Minka. I have no comment. Didn't befront him. So
yeah. And then it doesn't help too that you have retired Steelers greats, vets with a lot of respect within the organization in the NFL. I know Ryan Clark went on record to question whether or not the Steelers way was being upheld with this current group of players. So that contributes to the perception.
Absolutely. Well, the Steelers way, Ryan played on a championship team. They were champions for a reason. They had great players, great character. The 2000 team didn't. I mean, nobody knew Hines Ward and Aaron Smith, young guys in the locker room. Joey Porter was really young. Nobody knew they were going to be great leaders one day.
Mm-hmm.
They were just, looking around at all the idiocy going on around them. Guys were getting old. Levon Kirkland was getting older, and they were moving on. They were losing free agents. This team hasn't replaced those great champions. I mean, you don't have Hines Wards and James Ferriers and Aaron Smiths and Casey Hamptons and on and on and on. Look at all that character. And I have to agree that Cowher built a great culture. I don't know if it was just him, but man, there was a lot of character and there was a lot of thought about character that went into the drafts.
Mm-hmm.
You have to wonder right now, and you have to hope they're getting back to that, because while everybody's slamming this team for its talent and its coaching, the talent has been addressed. The entire personnel department has almost the entire personnel department has been turned over.
Mm-hmm.
And last year they had a great draft, brought in some interesting free agents. I mean, I'm thinking Landon Roberts can help this team for, you would hope 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Can be the middle linebacker that they need.
Yeah.
And so I think there have been other pickups. Nothing comes to mind right now, but because they were some of the older guys, but I think the offensive line is coming around, and the draft was so good that you got, this personnel department had one. So now put another one together and start getting some character in here like you used to when you had champions like Aaron Smith.
Yeah. Well, locker room dissension or not, there's still a game to play this Saturday. They're still in the hunt. They currently own the 6th seed due to some favors that were done. The Colts lost. I can't believe the Browns and the Bengals, they continue to win. Baltimore sits in that number 1 spot. It's going to be a wild card position if it's anything for the Steelers. But you were at practice today. Do you get a sense that this team has refocused and has their target set on this game this weekend?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And that was the universal consensus response to my queries about dissension in the locker room was, there's nothing that a W can't fix.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the truth of it. And so that's how they're all looking at this. And the Colts are beatable. And the Steelers have more rest than the Colts. Colts are going to be working on a short week. Steelers on a long week. So, and today it started a day early because it's a Saturday game. So today was Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't want to confuse anyone, but today was Wednesday. It's
That's
Tuesday,
right.
But it was a Wednesday in football terms.
Right.
So, TJ was working, looked good. And now, after they work, when they're in concussion protocol and after they work, then they have to get checked the next day to see if the practice did anything to them.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it doesn't. So I would consider TJ okay. Highsmith was more limited, but I got a feeling he's going to play. Landon Roberts didn't practice today, but I have a feeling he's going to play. It sounds like everyone's optimistic about him, and that's important in the middle. Minka, it looks like the key players are going to be there, and it doesn't look like the Colts are going to have Jonathan Taylor, and they've struggled without him.
Yeah. So struggling running game coming up against the Steelers, but also not such a great run defense as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, I saw that you wrote in one of your columns here that they're allowing 4.6 yards per carry. So it could be some opportunities for Warren and Harris.
That's the last 5 games.
Okay, last 5.
And that's against putrid competition. You
Mm-hmm.
think the Steelers haven't played anybody in the last 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the list of who the Colts have played, but their win-loss percentage of the 5 opponents is .328. The Steelers is like .425. And that included 2, 3, and 10 teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Colts haven't played anybody and are getting run upon. They're pretty soft. So, Najee didn't practice today. Jaylen Warren got all the work. I'd like to see Jaylen get all the work in the game myself, but you know where I stand there.
Yes. Yes. And I just want to touch quickly on the Patriots game. Because we were talking there about the defense, Landon Roberts, but was this a game where the injuries finally caught up to this unit, especially at inside linebacker? The Patriots went after the inside group with their tight ends, converted some nice passes. There were a few passes that were dropped, But do you think that the injuries finally caught up to this defense, and then with Highsmith and Watt going down, that that really just contributed to the overall weak effort?
In 93, injuries played havoc with the Steelers, and they used a kid named Chad Brown at inside
Oh,
linebacker.
here we go. Here comes the Herbig.
It didn't seem to hurt them. Push. So, injuries catch up with you, do something. Michael Walker's been there now three straight games. How many times are you going to watch that?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, injuries were a problem, but come on.
Yeah.
I think offense was the bigger problem. I know Tomlin ripped the defense at his press conference, but that was just because he has responsive leaders over there who are going to listen to that and do something about it. Man, he starts ripping the offense, and they're going to be, wow, we do suck. And that group needs confidence more than anything.
But they do suck.
I mean,
they do suck.
And the play calling was just hideous.
Yeah.
3rd and 2, 4th and 2, just hideous. Come on, there's no excuse. I don't want to hear any George Pickens did this against Baltimore on 2nd and 9. Against zero, against a cover 0. This was not the same thing. It's a backup quarterback flailing away. When you had 2 running backs back there, should have easily picked up that first down. Then you get into Boswell range. That stadium was rocking. As much as pissed off as that stadium was at the first half, it was rocking in the second half.
Yeah.
And it would have been a raucous come from behind. They tie the score there. They could go into overtime and shut that wretched New England offense down. They had all the momentum. Those play calls just killed everything. There's no excuse for that. That was horrible coaching. That was.
Agreed.
I defend Tomlin. He's going to be back. I think he's a great coach. That was a poor job right there. And he needs to bring in real offensive thinkers.
Yeah. If I can take off my media hat for a second and put on my fan hat, because I'm a fan first and foremost.
Let her rip.
Yeah. I was pissed watching that contest and some of those play calls. And it does get to the point where just seeing a lot of the same things repetitive over and over and over without any changes, I don't want to speak for the fan base, but I can understand. But also objectively looking at it from this perspective, zooming out and looking at a loss in context of a whole season, it's having an opportunity at the end of the year to make the postseason, which they still do. But I get it, because gosh, you're right. They could have been in overtime and had an opportunity to win the game, and it would have been an ugly win, but it still could have been a win.
But if we're really zooming out, to what end? To what end does beating the Colts help this team? They need a quarterback. I agree with giving Kenny Pickett the starting job again next year.
Mm-hmm.
But I also agree with bringing in someone else if you can. It's a second rounder. If you got a good first rounder, yeah, you got that position is way too valuable, and the backups are not showing anything right now.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't you say, we could draft a third team quarterback? Let the rookie be the third team guy.
Yeah,
at least you're developing, because there are a lot of things I like about Kenny Pickett. He's not wowed me to the point where that you say that's the guy.
Yeah. And I agree with you on 100% there too. You have to go in with a contingency plan, because you're right. You want to give him the opportunity year 3 with a new offensive coordinator to have that camp to get comfortable, get familiar. But if it doesn't pan out after 5 or 6 games, I think that chapter is closed. It's written. This is who he is, and you have to have somebody to go to. So
yeah, well, that's a decision to be made a long time down the road. That's a coaching in-season decision that you can't plan ahead and say we'll give him 5 games.
Yeah. Yep. Let's just hit on Tomlin's presser here to wrap this thing up. Anything of substance noteworthy that?
Other than he just held his shield out and deflected everybody's question. It bounced right back at them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Some of it was pretty funny. What did you think of Minka ripping his teammates for their poor effort? And he said, it was just putting a smile on his face for game day or something. That's how Minkah is. He smiles in the face of adversity. You could say whatever you want. I mean, it's not like he's being tested and graded. He's answering questions, and he's not going to air dirty laundry. He's not going to rip players unless someone needs it and he thinks it can be effective as a coach to rip that player from his pulpit. But otherwise,
well, to that point, I felt like his comment about George Pickens was a little pointed. Where he
again, what was that again?
That was where he said somebody asked about Pickens' antics on the side, and he said sidelines, and it was something along the lines that, it's a problem because it's not solution oriented.
Exactly.
So
that's a nice answer.
Yeah, but I also felt like he was calling Pickens out a little bit, which may have been the first time that I've seen that from him.
It's due. It was due. I think I've heard some grumbling from him about Pickens, I thought, but yeah. It's viable.
So Jim, what hope can you give Steelers Nation here? There are 4 games left. They're still in a wild card spot as we speak, but the schedule is going to get pretty tough. What is the best case scenario? Is there any hope for this team to figure it out before?
So you want hope? Okay, I'm going to smile. You want hope? I mean,
just give us the truth.
Really bad. Look what happened last night. And Miami lost. Green Bay's been tearing everybody up. The Giants beat them. Anything can happen if you get hot. You just got to get a hot quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't know that Trubisky's that guy. Can he beat the Colts? Man, beating the Bengals with revenge the way they're playing is going to be hard. But Seattle's beatable, and then Baltimore may have things wrapped up, so they could win 3. And if Kenny comes back and plays well, maybe he gets a little momentum and they win a playoff game.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's as good a hope as I can give you. Maybe a playoff win.
Well, I think with where this team is right now, that would be acceptable. And maybe you could call that a successful year, getting into the playoffs, getting a victory, advancing. I would think that most people would take it, but there's also, and I wrote about this, I shared it with you. I think there's a sense that that's not wanted. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's purge what shouldn't be in Pittsburgh, and let's start over.
Well, okay. Good luck firing a coach that can't have a losing record in a rebuilding year.
Yeah.
Definitely a rebuilding phase. I mean, it's post-Roethlisberger. Get a grip on this, people.
Yeah.
Rip me in the comment section. Go ahead. Just don't get personal. We don't have to get personal. Just say you're wrong.
Yeah, I know. I got to exercise my block finger to get ready.
Man, some of those guys. Jeez.
Yeah.
So anyway, my book's for sale, and it's Christmas time. So I've got 3 books for sale. My last 3 books at jimwexel.com. You can get them autographed. They're cheap. The Polamalu biography, the On the Clock book, and Steeler Nation Road Trip book's good one too. For if you want an old gem from 2008, you want to read about those boys. I went to their homes, their families, their neighbors, their high school coaches, Heath Miller, Brett Kiesel. Well, that was all fun. Troy Polamalu. That's how I got to know the Polamalu family. Anyway, jimwexel.com.
Yeah. Harken back to the great times of yesteryear. But that's going to do it for episode.
That's all I got for you. You wanted hope.
There we go. Well, we got a little string of it. That's going to do it for episode number 88. We hope to see you back here next week talking a Steelers victory. Moving into episode 89. Have a great weekend. Thanks for your support. Subscribe, comment down below, and we will see you back here for another episode of the Steel City Insider Podcast. Take care, everyone. See you, Jim.
See you, Jeremy.